What happens when the largest democracy in the world faces criticism? Today we're discussing the Modi government. A government that, like any other, is subject to scrutiny and critique. In the heart of democracy lies the power of the people, the power of their voices. And those voices ought to be heard, for they represent the collective conscience of the nation. Constructive criticism serves as the lifeblood of a thriving democracy. It encourages accountability, promotes transparency, and fosters a culture of continual improvement. In the case of the Modi government, there is no exception to this democratic norm. Criticism does not necessarily imply failure, nor does it propose an outright rejection of governance. Instead, it presents an opportunity to reflect, reform, and revitalize. It's a tool to ensure that governance is a process of learning, unlearning, and relearning, and that the government remains a true representation of the people's will. The Modi government, under the leadership of Prime Minister Narendra Modi, has been at the helm of Indian politics for the past decade. It has seen the nation through periods of growth and challenge, steering the ship of state amidst the tumultuous waves of global politics. The government's tenure has been marked by significant policy initiatives, economic reforms, and social programs. However, as we turn the lens of scrutiny onto the Modi government, we also unveil a series of criticisms. These criticisms range from youth unemployment to the plight of micro, small, and medium enterprises, from environmental concerns to the erosion of democratic institutions, and from social and economic disparities to the role of the opposition. Each criticism carries its own weight, its own narrative, and its own implications for the future of India. As we delve deeper into these criticisms, it's important to remember that they are not an indictment but a commentary. They are not a verdict but an invitation to dialogue. And through this dialogue, we hope to foster an environment that promotes understanding, encourages change, and cultivates progress. So let's dive into the points of criticism, one by one. Our first point of discussion is youth unemployment. A significant concern in contemporary India, youth unemployment is a complex issue that needs urgent attention. Despite the country's vast demographic dividend, an alarming number of young Indians find themselves grappling with the harsh reality of joblessness. You see, India is a country brimming with potential. It has one of the youngest populations in the world. Yet this potential remains largely untapped. While the youth are the country's biggest asset, their talents and skills are not being utilized effectively. We're talking about a generation of educated, eager individuals who are struggling to find meaningful employment opportunities. They are ready to contribute to the nation's growth, but are they being given the platform to do so? The challenge is not just to generate employment, but to create fulfilling, sustainable jobs that empower the youth. The question remains, how can we empower our youth? Next, let's turn our attention to the backbone of our economy, the MSMEs, or micro, small and medium enterprises. These are the unsung heroes behind India's economic growth, providing employment and contributing significantly to our GDP. But they are not without their struggles. Access to credit is a major roadblock. Many MSMEs find it difficult to secure the necessary funds to grow and innovate. This is compounded by bureaucratic hurdles, lengthy registration processes, complex tax regulations, and a myriad of compliances make it challenging for these businesses to thrive. Lack of infrastructure is another significant impediment. With inadequate power supply, poor connectivity, and limited access to modern technology, MSMEs often struggle to compete in a global market. In essence, our MSMEs are running a race with their feet tied. But imagine the potential if we untie those knots, if we provide the necessary support and infrastructure. Remember, supporting our MSMEs is supporting our economy. Climate change is a global concern, and India is no exception. As the world's third largest emitter of greenhouse gases, India faces a dual challenge: mitigating its emissions while addressing the pressing needs of its growing economy and population. Increasing temperatures, erratic monsoons, and rising sea levels threaten the livelihoods of millions, particularly those in agriculture and coastal communities. These changes also pose significant risks to India's biodiversity, making the need for effective environmental policies more crucial than ever. The Modi government has made strides in renewable energy, with significant investments in solar and wind power. However, the challenge of balancing rapid industrialization with environmental preservation remains. Furthermore, there's a pressing need to address issues such as air and water pollution, deforestation, and waste management. In this regard, the adoption of sustainable policies and practices is not just an option, it's a necessity. It's about ensuring a safe and healthy environment for present and future generations. After all, our environment is our responsibility. Transparency, accountability, and the rule of law are pillars of any thriving democracy. Yet, we're witnessing an erosion of these democratic institutions in India. This erosion is subtle, often insidious, creeping in through seemingly innocuous changes in policy or legislation. It's seen in the undermining of independent institutions, the suppression of dissenting voices, and the diminishing space for civil society. The erosion isn't always visible, but its effects are palpable. It's like a termite infestation, slowly but surely eating away at the foundations of our democracy. The most concerning aspect is the normalization of these erosions, where the extraordinary becomes ordinary, and the unacceptable becomes accepted. But all is not lost. We must remember that democracy is a living entity, constantly evolving and adapting. It requires our active participation, our vigilance, and our commitment to protect its integrity. After all, democracy is about the people, for the people, by the people. Lastly, let's discuss the widening social and economic disparities in India. The divide between the haves and the have-nots is ever expanding. The rich are getting richer, while the poor are left grappling with economic instability. This disparity isn't just confined to wealth, but also extends to access to education, healthcare, and opportunities for social mobility. The top 10% of the population holds more than 3/4 of the total wealth, leaving the remaining 90% to share the rest. This imbalance is not sustainable. It's a ticking time bomb, threatening social cohesion and stability. Inclusivity should be the cornerstone of any growth model, ensuring that everyone, irrespective of their social or economic standing, can partake in the nation's prosperity is not just morally right, it's economically smart. By investing in human capital and social infrastructure, we can foster a more equitable society. Inclusive growth is the path to a prosperous nation. Constructive engagement from all stakeholders is crucial for effective governance. In a thriving democracy, the role of the opposition is not merely to oppose, but to constructively challenge the government, offering alternatives and putting checks and balances in place. In India, the opposition's role becomes even more vital given the diverse social and political fabric of the country. The opposition parties are expected to reflect the voice of the people, particularly those not represented by the ruling party. However, the current state of the opposition in India leaves much to be desired. Their inability to provide a united front, lack of cohesive strategies, and a seeming reluctance to engage in substantive dialogue have often resulted in their criticism being dismissed as mere political rhetoric. This lack of effective opposition hampers the democratic process and can lead to unchecked governance. A robust, articulate, and responsible opposition is essential. A strong opposition is the backbone of a healthy democracy. In conclusion, genuine criticism serves as a catalyst for positive change. As we've traversed the complex landscape of the Modi government's performance, we've underscored several areas of concern that warrant our collective attention. The first of these is the issue of youth unemployment. A nation with such a vast young population must ensure that its youth are gainfully employed, as they are the architects of the future. We then moved on to discuss the plight of micro, small, and medium enterprises. These entities, despite their undeniable importance to our economy, face an uphill battle in the form of bureaucratic hurdles, lack of accessible credit, and inadequate infrastructure. Addressing these concerns is crucial for the economic stability of the nation. Our journey then took us to the environmental concerns that our nation is grappling with. The threat of climate change is real and imminent. It is therefore necessary to formulate and implement sustainable policies that will mitigate the effects of climate change and safeguard our environment for future generations. Next, we highlighted the erosion of democratic institutions. Transparency, accountability, and respect for the rule of law are the cornerstones of a thriving democracy. Upholding these principles is paramount to ensure the continued success of our democratic processes. We also touched on the widening social and economic disparities that persist in our society. While strides have been made towards progress, inclusive growth remains elusive for many. Addressing these disparities is essential to ensure a fair and equitable society. Lastly, we discussed the role of the opposition. Effective governance is a collective endeavor requiring the active participation and constructive engagement of all stakeholders. The opposition's role in this process is crucial, and their willingness to engage in meaningful dialogue and propose viable alternatives is key to the health of our democracy. As we've seen, these issues are complex and multifaceted, requiring a nuanced and balanced approach. However, by addressing these concerns head-on and fostering an environment of open dialogue and constructive criticism, we can navigate these challenges. Together, we can strive towards a more prosperous and equitable future for all citizens. Thank you for watching.